This is the first lecture of Module 8, JavaFX User Interaction. So we've been learning in the first few weeks of the course how to do some Java programming without any GUI interaction and without any GUI elements at all. And basically what we're learning is to build the model. In the context of the model view controller pattern, we're learning how to build the model. We're building how to build the mathematical simulation or representation of the thing that the program is supposed to do. Now, last week we started to talk about how to build the view. So we talked about how to build graphical user interfaces or GUIs. What we haven't done yet is completed the third leg of that three-legged stool and build the controller. Being able to put the user interaction in is the way to do that. Now we can finally tie the view to the model via some kind of a controller. Now there's not very many module outcomes, but I assure you they will keep you busy. So again, come back at the end of the week and convince yourself you have these things. My advice is to actually build some toy programs and try to make some actual interactions happen. They can be quite simple as long as you've done it once or twice. It will be helpful. We're going to talk about the ability to attach methods to GUI objects, therefore those GUI objects become user controls or user interface points, and also talk about how to create what the Java community calls transitions, but I'm just going to call animations. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. Basic process for creating user interaction. Create the model, create the GUI, assign some of the GUI objects the methods that get fired off when you click on them or when you mouse over them or whatever event you choose. Again, and just in terms of GUI, the process is the same. You're going to create nodes, you're going to create a pane, put the nodes in the pane. Put the pane in a scene, put the scene in a stage. As we'll see, I've talked previously that panes can contain other panes, and in particular the border pane is useful for most of the student projects, and so I'll have examples of that where we show how you can get multiple panes interacting with each other. The way that you assign methods to the actual objects is really straightforward. Now there are several different kinds of ways to do this. I think this way that I demonstrate in these lectures and in the software examples is the simplest way. If you had a button, BT My Button, and you want something to happen when the user clicks that button, after you create the button, you simply do BT My Button dot set on action and then some little phrase like this, E, arrow, and then the name of some method. The arrow is made literally out of a negative sign and a greater than sign. E stands for event. Now there's all kinds of events that can occur. There are mouse click events, right, left and right mouse click. There are mouse movement events, so you can move the mouse over something, you can move the mouse away from something. When you click on a particular portion of a GUI, then that portion of the GUI becomes in focus. So that's an event where the thing became in focus. Key clicks are in focus, so some people are saying in their projects they want to have a character moving around and they want to use, you know, up, right, left, down, left, right, up, down arrow keys. Those are key click events. How do you know what all the events are? See the Oracle docs. There are dozens and dozens of them, of which you will use only a couple. I'm going to do two examples before we get into the animations, and the two examples are the loan calculator program, which comes directly from the Liang text, and the flood map program, which I created as an example program for exactly this module. And the flood map program, the loan calculator program is very straightforward. You fill in the interest rate, the length of the loan, the amount of the loan, and it tells you what the monthly payments are and what the total payments are over the life of the loan. The flood map program is supposed to do a really primitive simulation of how a landscape would be flooded as water level rises. And this actually, the idea of this came from a student project several years ago, where a student was trying to simulate exactly that. So in this case, what I have on the GUI, remember the GUI is not the model, so what you're looking at is the view. Right? That's the GUI with the interactions. The thing that the user gets presented with is a landscape carved up into a bunch of little rectangles. Each rectangle is colored with the based on the height of the elevation of the average terrain in that rectangle. And then anybody who's below water gets colored blue. Now this landscape looks completely random, and the reason is it's completely random. I just created random landscape. If I were to refine this, I would extend this to where I could have files that represented actual landscapes, right? Cape Canaveral, Orlando, wherever, and then bring those in. But this is just, again, demonstrating the process. I'll talk more in detail about this in a few minutes, and with the code. And again, the way that I set those actions is exactly as I discussed before. I have a button called BT0. Each button actually has its own name. BT0 is for 0 meters, BT3 is for 3 meters, BT5 and BT8, 5 and 8 meters. So for example, with BT0, set on action. It's that simple. E, arrow, make that arrow with the negative sign greater than sign. And then I have created two methods. One is to color the rectangles based on their elevation, and one is to color the rectangles based on the water level. And because BT0 has a water level of 0, I put a 0 in there. But that's how straightforward it is to set some kind of an action for a button. Anything can become a button. Instead of set on action, it's on mouse pressed and on mouse released. We'll see those examples later. But you can create a circle, make that a button. You can put an image in, make it a button. Your entire pane that you're looking at could be a button. So you're allowed to set actions based on events to basically every object that you choose to. All right, let's start looking at some code here. If we look at the loan calculator, this is what it looks like when it runs. And you put in your percentage rate, and you put in how long the loan is, and you put in the dollar amount, and then it tells you there's your monthly payment and there's your total payments over the life of the loan. If we make this more like a house loan, okay. How is that done? Well, the authors, this is directly out of the Liang text without any modifications. The author creates two files. One is the loan, and then one is the loan calculator. The loan is the model, it's the actual loan. And the loan calculator combines the functions of the view and the controller. So the loan calculator sets up the view, and then when you click on a button, it will create a loan object and then manipulate the loan object. So both the view and the controller are contained in this one file. That's because this is not a terribly complex process yet, so they can afford to put these in the same file. As your projects get more complex, and we'll have some examples in a little bit about that, you're probably going to have more a separate controller. Okay, so I'm going to do this very quickly because you have access to the code and you can look over it, but as attributes, they create all the text fields and the button. And the text fields are there, remember, so that you can put in the interest rate, number of years, loan amount, and then they can get the monthly payment and total payment. And look at how they named these things. The annual interest rate is named text field, TF, annual interest rate. Number of years, TF, number of years. This is a good naming system because you can just look at the code and you have a really good guess as to what each of those text fields is doing. You don't have to rely on comments. BT calculate. Oh, okay, that's probably going to make the calculation occur. In the start stage, they use a grid pane, which you may have guessed because look at how nicely all that stuff lines up. And as I change the size of the window or the stage, it stays lined up. So there's a lot of just lines of code that all they're doing is setting up that set of text fields and labels. And then they set some alignment up. You know, this is just making it pretty. That's all that is. And then here it is, BT calculate. Set on action, calculate loan payment. And they create a method, calculate loan payment. And inside that method, first they get the value of the interest rate out of that text field. How do they do that? They get text out of that text field, and then they parse it into a double. So everything that comes from the computer is text. It gets text, brought in as text, parsed as a double. Then they need the loan amount, get text, parse it to a double. They need the number of years, get text, parse that as an integer. You can't say 5.5 years. Once they have those three things, they create a new loan object based on the in the creation. The constructor requires that you give it the interest in the year and the loan amount. Now, why would they create a new loan object here? Because they're going to do a one-time calculation. So they create the object, they do the calculation, the object dies. Usually you have an object that's persistent, and you would have created the loan up as an attribute in this class, and then you could keep modifying it over and over and over with the controller. Once they get the result, once they create the loan object, they ask the loan object to get the monthly payment, and they inject that into the text field for monthly payment using the set text method. This stuff here is just about formatting, so you get a dollars and cents result. You can look up formatting for printing and for text formatting. Those of you that took C, this will look pretty familiar. Once they do the monthly payment, they get the total payment. Again, that's a method inside of the loan class. And then they inject that using set text into the text field for total payment. And once again, they do some formatting so that you basically have what that means is you're going to have a float, a double, and the .2 is two numbers after the decimal place. So it starts with $1, it gives you a numeric answer, $2 after the decimal place. So here we have the view, the model. The loan is very simple, by the way. All it does is have these attributes, right? Annual interest rate, number of years, loan amount, and then it has the methods that tell you the monthly payment and the total payment. And then the loan calculator sets up the GUI and then builds a method that when you click the button, that method gets fired. One quick thing before I go. You can put anything in here, E, arrow sign, anything, and so you can actually have long sequences of code. You can open with a curly bracket, close with a curly bracket, and have long sequences of code. I don't recommend that. I recommend, as always, that you do your work inside of methods. So the way the author did this is a good model. Here's an example where I can do any amount of code. I did open curly bracket, close curly bracket with two statements in between. Notice that each one, though, was just a method call. So again, I'm doing all my detailed work outside of here. Improves readability. Okay, we'll stop here. I'm going to do flood map next.